talk to me about why it makes more financial sense to include a diversified lineup.
It doesn't matter if it makes financial sense because the other way doesn't make financial sense. It's not about finance. It's about handshake deals on the golf course.
We all know the history of house music, right? Like I'm assuming if you listen to this show, you know the history. At least you know that house music didn't start at frat houses and college campuses across America. Like, you know that much. If you don't, look up the roots of house music, do a quick Google search, Wikipedia will be sufficient, and then come back here. Now, some say, and I agree, that we have strayed away from what house music, who it was created for, why it was created, what makes it so special. We've strayed away from that a little bit. And that's why FEMME House exists. FEMME House is a nonprofit that's touched almost every aspect of this industry, from booking artists on festivals to hosting workshops across the country to creating a network for professionals, for women and gender-expansive people who might not necessarily have the same opportunities because they don't have, they don't have that handshake on the golf course opportunity that their counterparts get. So what you're going to get out of today is a different perspective on the state of the industry and a reality check, and some tips on how all of us can be better allies and to keep our eyes open and to make sure that equal opportunity is a real thing in this industry. I'm speaking to two of the founders, Lauren and Lo of FEMME House. I really hope you enjoy this conversation and you pay close attention because, like I said, there's some reality checks here that all of us need to hear. Well, today I am so excited to have co-founder Lauren Spalding and CEO Lauren Kopp of FEMME House on Elevated Frequencies. FEMME House creates opportunities for women, gender-expansive, BIPOC, and LGBTQIA creatives in the technical and behind-the-scenes area of music. FEMME House is developing the future of producers, mixers, engineers, DJs, artists, and executives of the industry by providing education, scholarships, cultivating community, furthering visual representation, and leveraging their platform to amplify the voices of marginalized communities. Lauren and Lo, it is so great to have you. I'm so excited to get into this. I've been following FEMME House for a long time, and I just want to first start off by talking about the fact why FEMME House exists is because there is a need. Clearly. So let's get into that.
Yeah, I think that, for us in LP, who's my co-founder, it was a really visceral and tangible need. At the time when she was starting her career as a DJ and producer, she was in an Ableton class with like 250 dudes in San Francisco. And the first time she actually felt safe learning Ableton was because she went to a class facilitated by Minnie Bear at Girls Rock Camp. If I'm, am I remembering that right?
Yeah. Well, so actually, it's funny. Yeah, when I first met LP, that was kind of like the beginning of my journey of getting into teaching. Like, I taught music production at a camp called Girls Rock Camp, and I had been trying to get hired as just like a music production teacher. There were like a handful of boutique music production schools in LA. And I was really frustrated at the time because a lot of those schools were kind of like made up in terms of like instructor gender makeup of just like men. And I felt like very intimidated trying to interview for those positions. But it was kind of like a kismet moment where I met LP, and both she and Mary Droppins, I met them at the same time, were teaching a DJing workshop. And I don't even remember how this conversation came up, but she's like, I work at like with W Hotels, and they have these studios, and we want to start, hosting and teaching these like music production workshops. And it just like blew my brain, because at the time I was just, I think, so frustrated of trying to kind of get my foot in the door in terms of like teaching production and feeling like it was just hard to get hired basically to teach that. And it kind of just like brought me back to when I also, I was in audio engineering classes in school, and there, the gender makeup was predominantly men. And it kind of like brought me back to the like feeling like I was the only non-dude in the room, and trying to become a teacher, it was like kind of like the same thing. So it was kind of like one of those moments where it just like felt like the right time meeting someone who was like trying to create a space that similar to a space that I wanted to create too.
Yeah, and on our end, we're meeting a bunch of aspiring songwriters and singers and artists and like these like super talented women who are sort of just like waiting. This is so specific to LA too. Just sort of like waiting for like a male producer to like pluck them out of obscurity and take them to the next level. And LP's experiencing this, and Mini Bear's experiencing it from the education side. And it was just like, what if we made something to like put all these narratives in one place and fuck them up and just create like a safe space? It felt like really simple and like, quite frankly, sort of shocking that it hadn't been done. And at the same time, it was the year that, Emily Lazar was nominated for Engineering Beck's album, and she went on to win the Grammy that year. And the Recording Academy had given, they'd done a big marketing campaign about that. And that's how we learned about the 2% stat that we're constantly and have been focused on for the last 5 years since we found it.
Can you tell my audience what that stat is?
Yeah, less than 3% of producers are non-male. And the actual stat is that they're women. So I imagine it gets really much more dire when you layer on other presentations of gender, right? Which is also something that we seek to address. So yeah, it's unfortunately gone down. We're doing a great job right over the last 5 years. It's since gone down, but yeah, there was something really visceral about like having these experiences and then learning about this stat and like sort of not realizing that the stat is coming to life for us, right? Not realizing that we're living the stat. It was just like, what if we just put some women in a room with Ableton and a teacher? And it's been off to the races ever since.
And that stat is particularly jarring when you think about the roots of this genre. Like how did we get here?
Sure. I mean, that's something that we sort of talk about internally all the time. And it's sort of been the direct line to all of the, I hate this, but like DEI programming that we have, it's why we have scholarships for BIPOC creators specifically. It's why we have scholarships for queer creators specifically. Because when you start to layer on, like the gender thing is a mess. You start to layer on race, when you start to layer on sexuality, when you start to layer on socioeconomic status, it gets really, really nasty. And like you said, right, like the roots of dance music are Black and brown and queer and female. And you would not know that by looking at the current like landscape, the Ultra lineup, for instance.
Yeah, I was just there, and
girl, so are we, girl.
Something interesting, actually. One of my friends said to me at lunch. I was with the label is Hood Politics, and one of the artists said, "Olivia, what do you think it is that makes certain shows you go and it's like 99% dudes?" And that's something that's always been in the back of my mind. But actually, when he posed that question, it was like my second day there. And then I spent the rest of my weekend looking at not just the lineups, but the people I was surrounded by. And, I think I'm married to a man. And so I feel like it kind of removes me from, I have the privilege of being removed from like feeling unsafe, I think. But I got into this headspace where I'm looking around. I'm like, I don't know if I would feel safe here if I was by myself. And so what do you talk to me about, like how the lineups and the fan bases are kind of mirrored in that way, because like attracts like, right?
I think that, like a big thing that I see is whether or not the mainstream wants to acknowledge it or not, like EDM is pop music right now, right? Like Even if songs on the radio in the top 200, for example, aren't labeled as EDM. Like, I think I actually did this exercise a couple of weeks ago, and it's just like the top 10 tracks or the top 15 tracks are essentially just like EDM songs, like bad EDM songs, don't get me wrong, but like EDM songs with vocals being labeled as pop. And when something is mainstream, then you have to think of what the majority of the population looks like, right? And I think a lot of where dance specifically has lost its way is that a great deal of dance culture is not EDM. And in fact, a lot of the creators in dance music, like if you call them EDM, would be like, fuck you. But, you know, the mainstream is reflected in capitalism, right? It's just like Insomniac is gonna, and thank God, like love Insomniac, they're great partners of ours, but they have to cater to an audience, right? They sell tickets. So EDC is going to be representative of the majority of tastes. Something that we sort of advocate for in our work with Insomniac, for instance, is like you go to a festival, you buy tickets to the festival, you're probably responding to maybe the first 2 or 3 lines of a festival lineup. So all that space below should and could be used to diversify, to show people more music, to show people other creators, to promote things like visual representation, to book queer artists, to book artists of color that are doing dance music, that are arbiters of dance music. And Insomniac has been very open to that. You know, a couple years ago, they gave us a Forest Art Car at EDC Las Vegas, and like our entire lineup, except for I think Sam Divine, it was like their first time playing in EDC ever. It was a lot of folks' first time playing a festival ever. So like these little levers of change are easy to pull. And what we try to do is make it easy to pull. We try to tell the partners that we work with, like, this is an easy thing that you can do. And it has great impact because if you give a queer artist, a Black artist, a female artist, a trans artist space on a lineup, put their name on a flyer, they can take that flyer and go get their name on another flyer. And it has a domino effect.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. It's like the getting your foot in the door kind of idea, you know, it's like, it's just, there's so many little gatekeeping things, you know, throughout on so many different levels throughout the industry. And like, it could be represented in so many ways. So if you're able to get your foot in the door in some way, like makes a huge difference for someone's career.
Right. It's that first step in the door that leads to all the other opportunities, right? Like once you're kind of in the bubble, it's easier to be bounced around. So what you all are doing is getting people in that bubble. So I know that you really cover the full spectrum of this industry, everything from the production classes. And I know you travel with those. I have lots of friends who attend when you're here in Chicago, which is awesome. And then you're developing everything from like artists to like photographers and other careers in the scene, right?
Yeah, I think, you know, for us at this point, like the bedrock of all of this is education. And we sort of think of it as a 2-pronged girl, right? It's like we can teach you how to produce, we can teach you how to take great photos, we can teach you how to DJ. But also on the back end, we're educating corporations, we're educating promoters, we're educating agents, we're educating all the industry resources that we've, you know, sort of had the privilege of amassing throughout our career. Like, yo, this is much easier than you're making it. And let us help you with that. We're interested in creating an industry that, you know, looks more like us, an industry that more adequately reflects society, like a civil and diverse and reflective society where everyone's identity is honored and seen and witnessed and validated and represented. And you know, it sounds like revolutionary, but it's not. It shouldn't be, right? It should just be the status quo, so that's what we're up to. And that's why we put our hands in anything that needs diversifying. One thing about it, baby, we coming to do it.
I love that. And you said earlier that, you know, a lot of people pay attention to the top lines of the festival lineups. And so I'm assuming, I'm not a booking agent, but what their argument can be is, oh, well, these are the people who sell tickets and this is why they're booking them. Talk to me about why it makes more financial sense to include a diversified lineup.
The thing about fucking like once a year, I get this question and I give the most unhinged feral answer.
That's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking for.
But in like 2 weeks, like Joe Wiseman and Insomniac's going to be like, girl, did you have to act like that? And I'm going to be like, unfortunately, yes, I did. But this is what happens. Like FEMME House with great intention, we sort of like think of ourselves as like the gatekeeper. This industry is built on doing favors for your friends. This industry is literally built on a very small number of dudes, white dudes, cis straight white dudes that have a concentration of power and they do favors for each other. Mm-hmm. And so what you're seeing is like an EDC poster isn't an EDC poster because someone is like lovingly curating their favorite artist. It's because like 4 agents with a whole lot of power that have maybe the biggest artists in the world say, you can have fill in the blank. This is where I always get into trouble. I'm like talking to myself right now, like, don't name names. These are real people. You will get in trouble. You can have fill in the blank, but you also have to take these other 8 fucking bros that are like mini me versions of fill in the blank and fill out the poster. And so why does it make economic sense to make a more diverse like lineup? It doesn't matter if it makes financial sense because the other way doesn't make financial sense. It's not about finance. It's about handshake deals on the golf course. So, our argument is no one is, like you think of how you engage with a festival. Are you with a magnifying glass, like looking at every...
You're going because it's the festival.
You're going because it's a festival. A lot of people aren't going, especially now, for the music. They're going to trip balls with their friends because it's a really fun time, which we advocate for. And we love when people act like that. So this idea that like people don't want diverse lineups or they don't know who these artists are, part of the fun of going to a festival, because actually, in my opinion, as a fan of music, a festival is one of the worst ways to see like your favorite artists.
Agreed.
When I go to a festival, like the funnest is like stumbling on someone I've never heard of. People are actually going open with spaciousness to discover. And so why not use that flex if, Ultra announced the 2025, like they put tickets on sale for 25 yesterday with no lineup. It's not about fucking financial sense. And that's like, those are the conversations that we're having in the back rooms.
That's an amazing point. And I hadn't connected those dots before. And I completely agree that it is so stressful to try to go see somebody at a festival that you really love, because you're like, am I going to get a good spot? Like, are they going to play the type of set that I want? Like, are there going to be annoying people in my way? It's too manic. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah. The fun. The fun is like when you get there right at fucking gates and you're just walking around trying to decide when to engage in your deranged behavior, looking for stuff to eat, just like checking out the vibes.
Yeah.
That's such a great point, and you kind of just like blew my mind a little bit. So one thing that I have many friends who are local DJs who care about the topics that we're talking about. I'm talking about, not straight dudes, everything but. And they are afraid to engage in these conversations, to start the conversations online, to advocate for themselves and others, because they think that it will edge them out of opportunities locally if they rock the boat by having these tough conversations. Do you see that in the people that you work with in workshops and other events that you host? And what advice do you tell them?
This one's for you, Lauren.
For me, yeah, I mean, I think right now at this point in my life, and I would say like the past like couple years or so, I think I just like intentionally try not to engage with people like that, which is kind of hard sometimes. I think particularly with like straight white cis dudes, which I guess to that point, I don't work with a lot of straight white cis dudes right now. I think because I like removed myself from that situation, which is hard because they are just everywhere. But yeah, I think particularly when I first, this is like, I guess one of those things too, where I also have to be careful with my words right now and not naming names. But when I first got into teaching, I think I was very frustrated by my personal experience of feeling like I had to be within a box, or I was kind of like, what's the word? Like, I felt like I was like kind of like a token identity that was like being used to show representation.
Right.
And that did a lot of things to my self-esteem. And I had to kind of like build myself up for like the past couple of years. It's like that stuff gets into your head. And again, it kind of brought me back to that place of when I was like in audio engineering classes in college and production classes in college. And I just like was in a room full of like dudes. And it really just like, it really informs you like in this like deep, deep child that's like inside of like what you can and what you can't do. But I think, yeah, because I think of my experience of like first getting into teaching and then also just like not even just teaching, but producing and just being in the industry for so long. I think I intentionally try not to engage with people that are not vocal or don't speak out and are just like not like real ones, I guess. But it's hard because it's like this industry is made up of people like that. So
what is the, I guess there is no playbook, but what about, you know, and I'm going to give a specific example because I think this will kind of help illustrate my question. But I had a friend, she moved away from Chicago and now she's DJing in LA and New York, but she was very vocal and a, you know, big supporter of everything that we are talking about. And she feels that the way that she conveyed these topics online, and because she was so vocal, it essentially closed the doors on her getting any more opportunities locally.
Yeah.
And it kind of scared her into silence.
Well, for one, tell her to come see us.
Yeah.
And for two, I teach at UCLA. Minnie Bear teaches at UCLA too, and Occidental. And one of the things I tell my kids is that, like, number one, this industry isn't real. It's like it's a literal made up house of cards. And the rules that you've been brainwashed with and programmed with are designed to make you believe that you can't do it and that you don't deserve to. There's been no greater time in history to illustrate that that's not true. Like, we all have the same technology. We all have the same platform. We all, like, the great equalization of technology and history and where the industry is. It's like, it's perfectly aligned to blow over the house of cards. And so, yeah, if you take a stand, like a bunch of my friends took a stand on Gaza and Palestine, and they've been like blackballed from doing certain types of gigs. That's really hard, but I'm like, isn't that good information? Like, don't you not want to work with people that would do something like that? And like, you know, luckily, because of the great equalization, you can go do cool shit with your friends. Yeah. You can go do things and build things with people that align with you on values and morals and integrity and the things that you find important as an artist. And that's what I would tell your friends to do. It's just like, you're getting scared out of rooms, you're getting chased out of rooms. They're probably rooms you don't want to be in.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a really great point. So I know that this is a multi-pronged approach. It's educating people how to navigate the scene and how to create and you know, secure opportunities. But then it's the education that you're doing with the people empower. So is there some sort of checklist, handbook that when you decide to work with an institution like Insomniac, what sort of resources are you giving them to say, hey, here's some things that you can do to make this a better space for everybody? How to diversify your lineups? What do you give those institutions?
We try to give them, and like we're at a pretty good space right now. Like I said, we've been at this is our 5th year. So we've got a lot of like data at our disposal from things that we've done that have worked. We've been on tour twice. We've done a bunch of festival takeovers. We know how many people are listening to the radio show. We know how many people are taking online courses. We know how many people are coming to our free sessions. The reminder for us that we try to, like, you know, when we're having these conversations about partnership, it's just like, all you got to do is create the space. It's a really easy thing. It's just like, you have to unlock a door, and then walk away. And the people that are hungry for this sort of, gesture, these gestures, like the artists that want to walk through the door and be a part of, you know, the Insomniac family, the fans who go to these shows and go, fuck, if I could just see one Black DJ over this next 4 days, people, you know, if you build it, people really truly will come. I think the next step in that education for us is sort of getting a little bit more intentional about making sure that the spaces themselves are safe, you know, like, it's like, so like we've taken it to the back rooms. It's like now we take it to the front room. Now we take it to the audience, and show folks like how to be good allies, and show folks what it means to create like truly intentional, welcoming spaces. So that's what we'll be getting up to over the next couple of years.
Wow, I love that. And there's a lot of clubs that do a good job, that have, you know, messaging posted. Like one that I shout out, like Spy Bar, you know, has messaging in their bathrooms that say, if you see any behavior like this, immediately notify a staff member. You know, I always love seeing security that does their job well, that, you know, even if there's riffraff going on, they don't try to rough people up. They handle things calmly. I mean, it just makes, like, without even really realizing, you just feel safer. So is that something, like, is that kind of education that you're talking about? Festivals, clubs, just being more inclusive, staff training, things like that?
Yeah, you know, when we have our in-person events, like when we went on tour, like the FEMME House tour, for instance, like we had a meeting with security every day. It's just like, yo, there's going to be queer people here. There's going to be trans people here. Mm-hmm. There's going to be people of color here. It's going to be a much different audience than you're used to seeing. Treat them with respect. Mm-hmm. Treat them like not even just with respect, like handle them with care. You know what I mean? Like, all your inclinations to like pick the drunk dude up and throw him out of the bar. It's just like, no, that's not how we do things. You know, like, so yeah, that's there's so much there that I could, you know, we've been talking for like half an hour, like we could be here for another 3 hours with me talking about it, but there's so much, there, insofar as like safety for artists and safety for the community, like all the stuff that's happened in New York at like Brooklyn Mirage, and just like, I've been with artists here in San Francisco where like we got kicked out of after a party and it's like 3 a.m. and like we're standing in the Tenderloin and our Uber's 38 minutes away, you know. So there's a lot of work to do with respect to safety. What we try to do when we're activating in person is just make sure that everybody that's providing space and taking space with us is aligned with the things that we believe in. Yeah.
And what about for the straight, cis, white, male, dude artists? What can they do? How can they be strong allies?
My friend Unique has a clause in her contract that says, if you book me, you got to book at least one other Black person, one other queer person. I need to see Black people backstage. I need to see Black people on stage, stagehands. And it really is that simple. So that's one way. That's an easy way. I always like, if like a white performer sees like riffraff going on and sees security getting rowdy, it's like, hey, yo, stop.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on? I think like the thesis that I want to leave here today, having communicated, is that it's really easy to have an impact. And the base of that impact is always just like, see something, say something.
I think a lot of people think it's harder to do these things that we've talked about than it actually is. And it's because they're so engulfed in their, friends helping friends little like environment that they've created. And it becomes so easy, right? When they're all just kind of helping each other out. And it's this feedback loop that they don't see a reason to kind of step outside of it and look from a higher perspective. But it really is just that, right?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you told me that the next kind of step is working on like the club spaces and making these environments themselves safer. Is there anything else? Because FEMME House already does so much. What is like the next evolution of the brand?
Oh my God. There's like 50 million things, girl. And like we just got back from Miami Music Week, and we went early to have like a retreat, like a leadership retreat, where we just like did dreaming and sort of like intention setting and goal setting for the next 3 to 5 years. And I'm not going to get into it, but it's going to be a lot going on, and you'll know it when you see it.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
It's exciting. And I mean, I don't really see anyone else doing this on the scale that FEMME House is doing it. There's some local groups, but it's really incredible that you've been able to get in with Insomniac, it's the monopoly on all of festivals in North America, and be able to enact some change. I mean, it's...
Yeah. I mean, for us, I think the overarching goal, is to sort of eventually have an end-to-end channel that starts with education, and you can like stay as a creator within the FEMME House universe, in this like cocoon of safety, and not have that like limit your career as a female artist or a queer artist or whatever. And partners like Insomniac, we just put out I think this is why you're talking to us. We just put out our compilation record at the beginning of the month, and it's our second one. And there's a cool moment. Like we did a panel this week at Miami Music Week, and I was taking questions. It was a really tight panel. We had an agent, a manager, the VP of A&R from Armada, Ronnie Ho, who's the head of dance development at Spotify, Julia Fugazi, who manages Bedouin, and Bailey Greenwood from WME. And I was taking questions at the end of it. The panel was just all about, creating opportunity and how to seize opportunity for artists that, need teams. And this person stood up, and it was Zlata. And Zlata has a track on our Insomnia compilation. And she was like, yo, I came here to say thank you to y'all in person, because this is my first time having a track on a record, and like I'm playing Ultra tomorrow because of that.
Wow.
And it was a really cool moment. So like we want to just create more of those moments where it's just like you can come to us and learn from us, and then we can get your track on a record, and we get your name on some flyers. You can play Ultra. You can you can take all these big steps and do it with the safety and support of our wonderful, beautiful community.
It's amazing. Community is so important to be able to push a career forward in this industry. Nobody can do it alone.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally impossible. And not just logistically speaking, but mentally speaking too. Mm-hmm. So it's really amazing that you provide that opportunity for so many people who deserve it.
It's a privilege. It's the coolest thing that I do, and I have too many jobs.
I mean, same. Same.
Lauren actually has way more jobs.
I literally have so many jobs.
Wow. My favorite quote in the world, I say it all the time, is if you need something done, you ask the busiest person in the room. And it is the truth.
Because we're idiots and we're going to say yes.
Yeah, don't ask me.
Idiots, or I don't know, just really talented. And it's hard when you have so many passions and so many skills. I mean, you want to share them with the world. And that's a beautiful thing that you do instead of gatekeep, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much. This has been a huge privilege for me to be able to talk to you both. I've been following the FEMME House journey, I think, since COVID. That's when I started working in this industry locally. And so I'm super appreciative of all the resources you put out and everything you do. So thank you both so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
The support.
Can we just talk about that point that Lo brought up for a second, the point about festivals being a horrible place to see your favorite artists? Because I've always known that. I've always felt that way. But I've never connected the dots on this, because when I asked that question, why does it make financial sense to have a diverse lineup? That was my business brain talking. But as a fan, Lo couldn't be more right. You go to a festival and you really, really want to see someone, like perfect example, Idris Elba at ARC this year. I am stressed. I've wanted to see Idris Elba, I can't even tell you how long. I've wanted to see one of his sets. And I am nervous that somebody or something is going to get in the way of me having a good time. And it's usually someone who means well, is a friend, but just talks too much. And I've been guilty of that before too. But they're talking because they don't necessarily understand that I really want to see Idris, or I don't know, there's a sweaty person who keeps bumping into me. I'm very, I get overstimulated and triggered easily at festivals. So, but I keep going to them because I love them. So anyway, all of that to say, festivals really are the worst place to see sets that you're super amped about. It's so much better to go see those artists that you adore at their own solo event, tour, whatever. And so it just makes so much sense for festivals to be the space where we really introduce a garden variety of artists. You're already in a good mood, you're doing something with your friends, presumably, you're ready to have a good time. This is when your brain is the most open and receptive to hearing new music. And I definitely have found some of my favorite artists because I saw them for the first time at a festival. So I just really love that point. And they don't need to hear it from me. They're in with Insomniac. They've got it on lock. I am so excited to see what FEMME House does this year. I know there's a lot of exciting things for them on the horizon. Go ahead and follow them to stay up to date. As always, I put, the people I interview, I put their links in my show notes. And if you like this episode, 2 ways to support the show: subscribe if you haven't already, rate me on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That helps bring my show up through the algorithms. It's a huge help. It takes about 30 seconds. And if you DM me with proof that you did it, I'll send you a surprise. Anyways, thanks guys for tuning in. As always, I will talk to you next week.